So, hey everybody, and welcome to another In Conversation With. So, if you're joining us on Friday night over on the Azure Live Twitch.tv channel, then thanks so much for tuning in. Please do take part in the chat, and don't forget to give the channel a follow to get notified, obviously, when we go live next. Equally, if you're watching this on catch up using YouTube, thanks so much for joining. Don't forget to give this video a like, and if you could subscribe, that would be absolutely brilliant. Really appreciate it. Okay, so my next guest is a software developer based out of Boston in the US. She's been granted the accolade by Microsoft of an MVP in artificial intelligence. She organises the Boston Azure User Group and is obviously passionate about sharing her learnings around AI and development. So, with that being said, I'm honoured to introduce my next guest on In Conversation With as Veronika Kolesnikova. So, hi Veronika, how you doing? How's things?
Hi.
You all right?
Yes, great to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
No, absolutely. I can't thank you enough for agreeing to come on the show and obviously have a little bit of a chat around artificial intelligence, which is pretty cool, I think, and obviously quite a hot area at the moment. But before we get stuck into all that sort of conversation, I don't know if you want to give yourself a bit of an introduction, let us know what you're up to, what you do in your day job, that kind of thing. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think you introduced me pretty well. I'm a senior software engineer. I'm working for an insurance company here in Boston. Now, it's pretty much everyone all over the world working from home. But when we reopen, I will be working in Boston. I'm mostly working as a backend developer. That's my
Okay.
full-time job. I'm writing some services, some backend web stuff that we all like, but I'm really passionate about Azure and AI. And obviously, as you mentioned, sharing my knowledge with the community. I'm writing blogs. I'm also organizing Boston Azure meetup and just presenting now again virtually. But before I was traveling all around the US, meeting people and talking about AI.
No, that's absolutely, it's pretty cool. I think that's how I first spotted you on Twitter world is obviously I noticed you were doing the Boston Azure User Group and you're doing some pretty cool things with AI, like you say, with your blog. And obviously we'll put some links to all of that content that you've got in the article associated with this video. So yeah, brilliant. AI, so artificial intelligence, it's certainly an area that's piqued my interest over the years. Caveat, I'm not a developer, I'm not an AI expert by a long stretch of the imagination, but I like to dabble and I like shiny new technology and I like to look at what's going on. So, should we kick off the conversation, Veronika, in terms of AI and the Azure platform? Just give it to me in kind of basic terms. Where are we and what kind of services are we talking about from an AI perspective?
Yeah, as you mentioned before, AI is a hot, huge topic right now. So all those big tech companies, including Microsoft and Amazon and Google and other smaller companies, they're all focusing on AI and maybe on IoT as well. And now they are trying to mix and match. So that's the trend that I noticed, that AI is moving closer to IoT solutions to improve them. And I think it's a good next step to actually kind of get them closer together. Because as we all know, IoT can't actually, in most cases, can't actually function without artificial intelligence. So I know that Microsoft is focusing on that trajectory, and also they are always improving their cognitive services. I am personally a huge fan of cognitive services. I think cognitive services brought me to AI. I got interested in AI thanks to the offerings from Microsoft and how easy it was to start using them.
Yeah.
And now Microsoft is keep improving those services, and also they introduce Azure ML, which is for people who are more on the data science um,
Yeah.
stream, not just developer.
No, I'm with you. I think the fact that you bring up cognitive services straight off the bat, I think that's what I've seen, and I suppose from an AI perspective, you're hit with the same, the same. I wouldn't call it an issue, but the constant evolution of these feature sets within Azure is constantly evolving and changing and getting better. So I guess you're having the same challenges maybe to keep up with these changes and kind of introduce them into kind of platforms. Yeah, I mean, it sounds very similar. So, I mean, in terms of, let's start off on cognitive services then. So, what does that actually entail, and kind of how can we maybe get started with maybe looking at some of these kind of things as maybe an IT pro, somebody that's not got a massive amount of dev experience, but just wants to kind of try and understand these things a bit more. What does cognitive services have to offer us, Veronika?
Yeah, cognitive services are awesome. I'm repeating myself, but I'm a huge fan. Those are APIs and SDKs, and just recently, they also, by they I mean Microsoft, they are offering cognitive services um, through Docker, through containers. So they are
Okay.
really accessible. I started with REST API stream of things with cognitive services because for me personally, that was the easiest way to start using them because you just need that access URL and then the key, and then you are good to go. You can access all that machine learning capabilities of different cognitive services like face recognition and object recognition, video services, and text, language services. There are so many of those. And I mentioned before that they are kind of changing them, but at the same time, the core set of cognitive services is staying the same, and they're just improving them.
So I guess, am I right in thinking that the cognitive services offered things like vision and speech? You said there were some language services in there. I'm assuming that Microsoft used these themselves in other product sets like Teams, for instance, where I don't know, maybe you're speaking in real time and it's giving kind of the subtitles in multi languages. Am I right in thinking that, Veronika? They're the kind of services that, as a developer, you've got access to bring into your own applications.
Yes, you are absolutely right. Always as an example, I'm bringing up the PowerPoint functionality where you can bring up translation, or you can bring up the speech to text capabilities. So if you are presenting for international audience, or there are some troubles hearing what you say, it's always convenient to use those tools inside PowerPoint.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So like you say, these are, so the cognitive services is it a feature set that you can kind of just hook into? Like you said, it's using SDKs. I mean, are there any other ways that you can kind of utilize those services, or are they purely development SDKs that you would hook in using the REST APIs? Are there any kind of package solutions that you can use those with?
So regarding cognitive services, they have those APIs, SDKs, and now they're all available in containers. But if you want something more out of the box, or maybe if you have mixed team, or maybe it's strictly a team of non-developers, but they still want to be useful for the product, for your
Yeah.
project you're working on. I know that Microsoft is working on a Power Platform. They have lots of great AI-related offerings there, like bots, virtual assistants there, and then I think AI tools. I don't want to lie about the name of them, but if you try to search Power Platform and then AI, I'm sure you'll get good results in search engine.
Oh no, that's pretty cool. So you mentioned, so part of that kind of, I guess it's the application development and agents that you can install with AI. You mentioned bot services then. So I mean, that's something triggered in the back of my mind. I'd seen some of this a little while back, maybe at one of the Ignite sessions. But can you explain the bot service to us a little bit more? What does that entail, and how can we use bots, across our applications?
Yeah, bots are becoming a huge part of every business. They can be text-based, they can be speech-based, and all those devices like Alexa, like devices with Alexa or Cortana enabled. There are so many virtual assistants, and actually, virtual assistants are bots. I know it's a little debatable topic, but I personally think that virtual assistants are bots because they have that bot base, and then on top you're building additional capabilities of a virtual assistant, and then connect them to Cortana or Alexa or any other virtual assistant.
So I guess when it comes to a bot, if I were working for a business and I wanted to create my first bot on something, can I do things like, if I've got a central repository of lots of information that, maybe, we're talking, I don't know, gigabytes or terabytes worth of data, maybe PDF files, can I hook a bot into something like that to do a search and say, if and kind of speak in natural language, go and find me all the articles based on XYZ? Does it give that kind of capability, Veronika?
Yeah, so actually, in order to develop a bot, you can use, for example, Azure Web App Bot, which is not a part of cognitive services, but because it's on Azure, it integrates with cognitive services amazingly. You can use, in addition to just straightforward bot, you kind of have to connect it to AI tools, and there you can actually use cognitive services as that machine learning AI support. Q&A maker is awesome. I think it's a great cognitive service to integrate in a bot. And actually, when you are going to Azure portal and trying to create a bot, it offers you a couple of templates right there in the portal. One is using Q&A maker, and another template is using Lewis, or language understanding intelligence service. So I think Lewis is next level of language understanding, but they're doing awesome with bots. And then, on top of that, you can always use other cognitive services like image recognition, and then translation and text recognition. So it depends on what kind of bot you're building. You can integrate one, two, or all the cognitive services that are available there.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So yeah, like you say, it's really about understanding, first off, what do you want the bot to actually do? So I guess my layman's term way of understanding bots is, we all go on websites now for lots of services, and more often than not, you end up having that little chat bot in the corner of the screen that will pop up and say, hello, can I help you? I'm a virtual assistant. Now, you mentioned Q&A maker. Is that the service where you can almost, type in expected questions and then give a list of, answers maybe that would relate to that, and you could start off, I'm right in thinking you could start off really basic with just making it, if somebody asks this question, give this answer, but then, like you say, you can start building those responses up using the plethora of AI services. Is that basically, I probably massively oversimplified things there, but is that how these things fit together, Veronika?
Yes, yes, you are mostly right. So Q&A maker, why I mentioned it first, it's just easier to start. I know lots of companies, they have either documentations where they have kind of that structure, where they have questions and answers, or maybe FAQ pages on their websites. and they can just reuse them for Q&A Maker. So Q&A Maker will analyze those documents or web pages, and then it will be a base for your bot. And also, I think recently, maybe last year, they added that they call it chit chat feature. That's pretty much the kind of the mood of the bot, or the way it kind of builds their conversation. So like small things like hello, if it's more formal, if it's official website of a company, maybe it should be hello and welcome. And then if it's something more fun, maybe some kind of game, then it should be something, hey, how you doing? So the different
Right.
ways of communication and like basic things, they already pre-built in Q&A Maker, so you don't need to worry about that.
Wow. So there's, like you say, there are a series of templates that kind of Microsoft have got there for the offering for, either, people like myself that dabble, dabble in development, but so I could download those, start using those and configure some really basic services using Q&A Maker.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, cool. Oh, excellent. I mean, obviously, I have seen bits and pieces of cognitive services and obviously bot services over the time. But I mean, AI in Azure, you hear it all the time, especially you mentioned IoT there at the start of this conversation. And that's certainly a world that I'm paying a little bit more attention to at the moment. So, I mean, what other services outside of cognitive services and bot services does Azure have to offer us in terms of, I know you mentioned machine learning. I mean, are you able to describe it in as simple terms as possible to kind of boil it down as to where does machine learning fit into all of this, and how does that relate? Why is that artificial intelligence? Are you able to kind of somehow make that as simple sounding as I haven't?
Yeah, that's okay. So many questions. Let me
Yeah,
actually
no.
go step by step there. So I think there are different layers of machine learning that Microsoft offers. So it depends on your level of knowledge. So if you're a data scientist and you're working with machine learning all the time professionally, that's one set of tools. But if you're a developer, that's a different set of tools. But if you just maybe a user, maybe you're a manager, you don't non-development manager, so you don't code yourself, but you still want to help your team out and create some tools based on machine learning. There are different tools for that. So I think the simplest, I shouldn't say the simplest, because it's also, it takes some time to go through the documentation and maybe check the tools. But for people who are not developers, or maybe they're using for more out of the box solutions, there's that Power Platform that offers a lot of awesome tools for bots, for AI, for IoT. They have everything there. And then I think next level will be cognitive services. So cognitive services are for developers, since they are APIs and SDKs. That's why you need to have some coding experience to integrate those. But you don't have to have any machine learning experience or deep knowledge in it. It's always helpful when you do have those knowledge, but you don't have to have them. And then the top level is probably the Azure Machine Learning. So they have a separate portal. It's just called Azure Machine Learning. Anyone with Azure subscription can access it and then start building your custom machine learning models, work with them, deploy them, design them. There are just lots of customizations there that is available for maybe for more people who are into data science or who work with machine learning on a daily basis.
But am I right in thinking that a lot of these, the ability to kind of compose, I suppose, is that the right word? A machine learning model is you can almost do that through the portal using some of the Azure tools and services within the portal. Where am I right in thinking you grab? Again, I'm massively oversimplifying this, but you get yourself a set of training data or training information, and yeah, like you say, with the knowledge that you would have as a machine learning or a data scientist, you could push it through some kind of an algorithm or I don't know what the word is, but it's not a model. It's but some kind of a training mechanism that would then produce a model, and you could say whether it was giving right results or not accurate results. Is there a way that you can kind of simplify that process for me, Veronika, in terms of how do you actually create a model, in simple terms now, and then how do you take that model and use it somewhere that it's going to, give you the results that you need to use in an application or whatever it may be? Is there a simple way of painting that picture?
Yeah, yes. I mentioned Azure Machine Learning Studio. It's just a web portal. I can actually share my screen and show how it
Yeah.
looks.
Yeah, cool. Let me jump on over. There we go.
So
Cool.
here's just a quick overview. You go to ml.azure.com. You register there using your just Azure portal credentials. You connect it to some Azure resources, and then you have that wide variety of tools for machine learning. You can create different notebooks. Automated ML is great, so you don't have to actually pick the best algorithm to create your model. It will automate that process and make your life easier based on your data, and then actually returns the best algorithm for your data, and then you can build your model based on it. And then the designer, that's really exciting because you can drag and drop different things. Um, I'm just opening random things because I was trying different tools here. I unfortunately don't work with those tools on a daily basis, but as I'm preparing for Microsoft AI exam, I kind of went through some details there just to make sure
Cool.
I understand.
No, I can see it there. So effectively, you're able to use that ML Studio to almost create like a pipeline. I guess that pipeline is what is it doing? Is it grabbing the subset of data that you've got, and is it doing some kind of a transform? And I can see you've got clean missing data, so maybe it's taking that data set and doing something to it to make sure it's in a nice normalized state, ready to feed in and train the model. Is that what you're looking at there, Veronika?
Yes, you are right. And I like that it's really straightforward. You can see what you're doing with your data or what's the next step. And then you can see that it's green here. So it went through correctly. So something is not going right, then you'll get a notification there as well. So you can change, and here on like that middle part, you have all the tools that you need, the data related tools with lots of detailed information. So you can just pick and choose those blocks and create your pipeline.
Cool. So am I right in thinking then that those little circles, they're kind of inputs and outputs to each of these kind of blocks that we can take the results from the one block, feed them as an input into the next block, and then an output. So you've got multiple outputs maybe. So you could do some split of that data and do two different things, could you, to that data, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so split data, that's the main thing, I think, in machine learning, because usually when you have just one data set, you need to split it in order to use one part for training and another part for testing, just to make sure that your model is acting correctly, it was created well, and is actually efficient and returns correct results.
Okay, so I see. So you'd have a model that you would have trained with some data, and maybe that's good as a version 1.0 of that model. But then maybe as time goes on, and you're noticing that maybe there's some new data that I don't know is not actually acting on properly, you could actually just retrain that model, could you, and create a version 2.0 of that same model, but then with a little bit more information that it's able to articulate and correctly give you as good as you possibly can the result that you're expecting. Is that kind of what you can do in ML Studio, is it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a good approach in machine learning in general. So you need, as any kind of software, you need to keep it updated. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have logs, or you know that something went wrong, or you just get new data, you can just grab that data and then add it to your model and then retrain the model so it will be more accurate.
So no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's great to see that actually. I've seen little snippets of this, but never really dabbled in it. It's too big. Azure is too big, to go into every area. You focus on the bits that you kind of need to know. But one thing I have been dabbling with lately is Onyx models. So I don't know if you can shed any light as to the different types of model that you can produce from this. So as I understand it, Onyx is primarily the Windows machine learning model, the default file format, I guess, is what it is. Is that right, Veronika? Or I'm not telling any lies there, am I, to your knowledge?
No, yeah, you are right. I think Onyx, I've never worked with Onyx. I only saw it in cognitive services, like when you work with custom vision, you can then export your models different in different environments, including Onyx. So that's pretty much the extent of Onyx that I know. But
Yeah, sorry to cut in, Veronika, but that's exactly where I saw it. I was playing about with some custom vision sort of training images just to object detection and images, and it gave me this whole list of different formats. So you had things like PyTorch and TensorFlow, and I think there was one. Is there one called Scikit or something like that? I think I saw in there. But there were lots of different. So I mean, have you got what are the kind of models you've worked with, and are you able to help me understand those, or do I just need to do a bit more research?
I won't be able to tell you about all the models,
No,
but
no.
I know that I used experts to mobile, like using TensorFlow, and then I think for iOS platform it was a little different. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, if you export, you can actually have that model on your mobile device, and then you can work directly with the model, even if you are offline. Not you, but your end
Mm-hmm.
user who is using your application, so they don't have to be online in order to access your model. That's the benefit of, for example, that custom vision functionality, where you just create a model there and then export it and can use whatever you want. And then for an Android, you can use that TensorFlow to actually access the data right from the device. I know there is an option to retrain that model. Maybe not that model that you exported from that cognitive service, but in general, you can retrain your models right on the device, because now the devices, all mobile devices, they are getting so smart, they are so fast that you can actually do machine learning right there.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
know lots of people are not recommending doing it because your phone is getting too hot when you're
Yeah.
doing it,
Yeah.
and you don't want to do it all the time. But if you have to, that's an option too.
But I guess the general principle is that if you're looking for some kind of artificial intelligence within an application or whatever it may be on an edge device or something local to you, the general principle is that you've got some data that you use to train this model. You train the model using something like ML Studio in Azure or cognitive services, the custom vision AI. I think there's a website, customvision.ai, that I think Microsoft have got for kind of object recognition and detection. And once you've trained that with a set of data, you can export that model. Is that the same with the data models there, Veronika, that you can export those models, or would you use those models in situ within the portal? Or how can you consume those models once you've created them?
Yeah, there are several ways you can just use them kind of in the portal. It's not exactly stored there. It is using your Azure subscription. So it's stored on Azure, and then you can access it using REST API or for some services. Or if you're using other tools, then you definitely can export it and use it right on your device. As I mentioned before, there is also an option to create a container and then use those model in a container or on an edge device. I think that's similar. You can just set up a container on your edge device and then access your model that you created right there, and you don't have to have internet connection.
Oh wow! So do you know if Microsoft have sort of pre-canned container images that you can kind of package your model into and then talk to either via other modules on an edge device, or how does that work? Or do you have to kind of export it into an application that you then containerize? What have you seen, Veronika?
So yeah, a lot of those cognitive services, they have that container support, so they're just right there. You can just grab and use them. Not all of those cognitive services are supporting that, but I know that Microsoft is working to provide more support for containers.
And that's pretty cool. It's certainly, it's opened my eyes up to the power that you can actually start to create these sort of artificial intelligence applications, how you can build that in now. Like I say, I'm not a developer, and even I've managed to do a few things, which is, saying something. I mean, just to shift gears slightly, Veronika, in terms of one thing that I've heard a lot about over the years when you talk about AI and obviously artificial intelligence and machine learning, we hear this term responsible AI that comes up quite a lot. Have you had any experience with being in discussions as to what that means and what kind of things we should be thinking about when training machine learning models and things like that? What's your take on that, Veronika?
Yeah, I got really excited about that topic maybe a couple of years ago, but it wasn't that popular. Maybe I shouldn't say it wasn't popular. I guess it's an important topic that everyone should definitely pay attention to. But not a lot of people were talking about it. And then maybe last year after Ignite, I started reading more and more about it. And I realized that Microsoft is doing a great job actually creating some tools and guidelines in order to create more inclusive environment and make all those machine learning tools and AI models are more inclusive.
Because it's quite a I've a few other guests I've had on this show, we've talked about various things. One guest I had, we talked about robotics and autonomous vehicles and the decision making process, and so it kind of touches very much into kind of the fabric of society and culture and ethics in terms of, you hear a lot of people as well say things like AI models, they're like a black box. You don't necessarily know how that model has come to its decision-making process other than by looking at the reams of training material. And I mean, the way that I try and understand this responsible AI. Like you say, it's about making it more inclusive. And what could that mean? But it's things like if you train a model, this is my understanding, if you train a model based on, historical data, and that historical data through whatever mechanism has got some bias built into it, you're effectively training a biased AI model. Is that pretty much what it means, Veronika?
Yeah, so that's only one approach to responsible AI, but there are lots of different tools that is available, so you can actually make sure your data is correct, because machine learning is basically garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you are feeding it with wrong data, with biased data, or maybe it's data that is old, or I don't know, missing data, then you are going to receive the model that is not responsible, that is not bringing good intentions to your product and to your end users.
Because it can go quite deep. I think there's actually a show on Netflix, or there's a new film. I forget the name. It crossed my mind then, but it was about. I think it's called something like bias, coded bias. I think it's called on Netflix, but it's about that historical data where there's been lots of things culturally built into society, and now these things are kind of built into AI platforms that have kind of learned the bad habits that we've all had as a society over the decades, and they're using that data to feed into models that are kind of making decisions. A computer's making a decision. The computer says no, is a phrase in the UK that is a comedy phrase. But, it's that thing about being very mindful, I guess, about what that data is that you're putting in and what the expectation is coming out. I mean, have you had to kind of work in environments like that yet, Veronika, or like you say, it's something you've been reading up on? I mean, how are businesses around you? How is the company you work for? Are they thinking of these things now?
Yeah, definitely. All the companies, they are recognized. They starting to recognize the bias, and they are trying to attract more inclusive workforce, because it's not only about data itself. We all have our own perspectives based on our experience or our culture. That's why it's good to have multicultural teams with different backgrounds. So maybe something that is completely fine for me is unacceptable somewhere else in the world, or people with different experience feel like that's offensive. And there is no way for me personally find out that that's something that we need to pay attention to or get rid of in our data, only when we have people who can come and say, okay, that is not acceptable, or maybe we need to change it because this and that, then we can definitely work on improving the data, improving our models, and then in the end, improving our machine learning tools in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess it's like having that feedback loop that when there is something that is not right in whatever way you understand not right being, then you can obviously feed back in, retrain that model to correct those flaws. But yeah, I mean, it's just such an interesting area. When I've heard it spoken about before, it's like it's almost like that you're no longer just a technical, a techie, a developer. You've got to have all of these kind of things to think about. I mean, you mentioned that Microsoft have got some tools that can kind of help with those kind of things. I mean, could you describe those and maybe where we can find them and what they're about? Have you got any insights there, Veronika?
Yeah, so I wrote a blog post about it. I just went through some tools that Microsoft is offering. But if you just search for responsible AI in Microsoft, then you can see not only specific tools, but also some guidelines how to make your AI more responsive, what more responsible, what you need to keep in mind when you build in AI tools. I saw a presentation about responsible AI where they showed Jupyter notebooks, and they were able to tweak some parameters to see how those parameters affected the end result of the model, and it's awesome. So you can check the model on bias, or maybe check if something is not right in the model before you actually deploy it and start using it in other products.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, like you say, they built those into Jupyter notebooks. So they're the interactive notebooks, aren't they? My understanding. Again, very little experience with Jupyter notebooks, but they're they are the interactive books, aren't they? Where you can kind of just run some tests against your model. I'm assuming, and it'll, I'm guessing, give you a green light that that's not bad, or a red light that, hang on a sec, you've got some more work to do with that model. Is that the best way to describe them, Veronika?
Yeah. I'm not gonna go too
Cool.
deep since I'm not
No.
a data scientist, but
No,
I think
absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's just such an exciting area. I think, just to pick up on the IoT thing again, I think some of the advances that have gone on now with how, we're bringing together all these different worlds of, sort of IoT developers, data scientists, great software engineers like yourself, and we're kind of putting them all into a mix to create some really innovative solutions. And it's just great to see how, it's even reaching to people like me that aren't developers or have association with any of these areas. I'm, in a completely different world in IT, but how all of these things are coming together at the moment to kind of produce these solutions that we then deploy into business and customers and support them and that kind of thing. I mean, is that how you're seeing things go from your point of view at the moment, from a developer's point of view, Veronika?
yeah, definitely. No, the more experiences, the more different backgrounds we have, I think the better tools we are able to build, and we can get different ideas from different people. That's exciting. And with the improvement of technology, we can reach out to people all over the world and talk, share ideas, and build something new.
Ah, it's just such a fun and interesting area. I mean, we've done. I appreciate it's been. You've had to describe it to me, so it's had to keep it in layman's terms. But I appreciate we've covered pretty much quite a wide. Are there any other areas in Azure that you can think of, Veronika, in terms of it's noteworthy of talking about at the moment, or do you think we've covered the kind of broad area of AI that's available to us?
Yeah, I think it's a really high level overview of everything is available on Azure. There are also some completely custom tools like ML.NET, which is not tied to Azure specifically, but is a great tool for .NET developers to start using machine learning.
No, cool. I know that there's a lot of. I've started dabbling with the kind of the hardware side of IoT, so I know there's lots of little devices and sort of packages coming out for things like Raspberry Pi, the NVIDIA Jetson Nano as a like hardware accelerated edge device. There's loads of things that you can kind of grab hold of, and lots of these things are also in simulator form, so you kind of don't need to spend your hard-earned cash to go and get some of these little devices. You can run them in kind of simulators, which is really cool, really exciting to kind of see that development. I mean, Veronika, this has been such an an intriguing chat. Thanks so much for joining in. I mean, before we wrap up this call, I wanted to change track slightly. You're the organizer of the Boston Azure User Group. I mean, do you want to give us sort of 5 minutes over how you got involved with that, why you do that, and how it's going, and obviously how people can reach out and we're all in a virtual world now, so I presume you're accessible from all corners of the world, so to speak.
Yeah. How I joined Boston Azure, that's a long story actually related to me starting public speaking. So the main organizer of Boston Azure, Bill Wilder, helped me a lot to start my public speaking career, so-called. He helped me to come up with my first talk and provided the platform. So the whole community was really supportive. That's how I joined Boston Azure. And then at some point, Bill actually invited me to become a core organizer because it's always really busy. We have so many events to manage, and especially when it was in person, there are so many different little things that they just had to be done. So I was happy to just jump in and help Bill as much as I can. And then last year, since we moved to that virtual world, we now combine our forces with North Boston Azure Group. Because now we're not tied to a specific place, we just decided to combine our forces with Jason Haley and his group, and we are trying to have at least one meetup, virtual meetup a month. Sometimes we have two. We are thinking about organizing like a small event, maybe a series of sessions, or just one day when we have several sessions. So we are working on it. And then people can find us online. We are all on Twitter, Bill, Jason, and I. We also using Meetup website. You can find us either if you search for Boston Azure User Group or North Boston Azure. And then actually, I forgot to mention the main part. Boston Azure is probably the oldest user group in Azure related user group in the world.
Cool.
We're really excited about it. Thanks to Bill Wilder, because he organized it many, many years ago.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great kind of footnote to have at the end of the day, isn't it? That's the oldest Azure user group. There's certainly a lot of user groups in the UK springing up, which is great to see. There's lots of section. I'm presuming you're open to anybody to come and attend the events that you're putting on at the moment, Veronika?
Yeah, definitely. Just find us on meetup.com or follow us on Twitter. We are trying to post about our events there. And yeah, you'll just get the Teams link and join us. And yeah, we also have a YouTube channel where we post some recordings. But if you want to virtually meet people, interact with them, we definitely encourage you to attend the meetings live.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we'll get all of those links. We'll put them all in the post to accompany this video. So, people don't have to go and search. Just click on the link below the video, and we'll have all those links neatly prepared for you, so everybody can find you. But I mean, Veronika, I cannot thank you enough. That was a fantastic conversation. I certainly learned a bit more about AI on the Azure platform, and I think it's one of those things that personally I'm trying to refrain, because I know it's so exciting. I want to get involved. It's just not enough hours in the day, I think, is the problem I tend to have. I mean, are there any other parting words of wisdom or points you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you for having me. It was a great conversation. I'm again really happy that we can connect with people all over the world. And you're being in UK and me being across the pond in the US. It was just a great conversation that we had here.
No, absolutely. I can't thank you enough, Veronika. The feelings mutually is just great in this day and age. We can reach out and, forge these virtual relationships. You never know. We might cross paths. We might be at an Ignite session at some point in the future. Fingers crossed, eh? Fingers crossed. But for now, Veronika, I cannot thank you enough. Thanks so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
And we'll speak to you soon. Thanks, Veronika.